Alrighty, so we are in the middle of week 10 already. The NFL season is flying by. DST streaming this week. It looks a little thin for the position. I will break down my top 6 choices on the week and my top 6 matchups, and hopefully you're able to glean enough information, and hopefully one or a couple of these are available in your league so that you can pick up one of them to stream in week 10. So the first matchup is the Buffalo Bills going up against the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins at the trade deadline were sellers. I do think this is going to set it up where you're not going to see the Dolphins have quite as much oomph, just because at this point in time, they're pretty much out of the playoff race. They are way too far behind the Bills, way too far behind the Patriots, and it's going to set up as an interdivisional rivalry game. We saw what happened earlier in the season. The Bills just came off of probably their best defensive performance against the Chiefs. I do think some of that energy and some of that juice carries over to this matchup. It's a game that Buffalo's going to win easily. They're going to be up by a lot of points early on in the football game. It should set up where they're up by so many points that they're able to rush 4, maybe rush 5, just pin their ears back and get after Tua. Tua's been turning the football over, fumbling, throwing interceptions. We've seen flashes obviously out of this defense too, like for DST specifically, so they're a viable enough option in week 10. The next matchup to consider, and this is like a spicy one, so normally I do this at the end, but I'm going to do it a little early this time. It is the Panthers going up against the Saints. This Saints offense has been pretty bad on the season. Tyler Shuck through his first 2 starts hasn't been horrible, but there's just not a lot of juice out there. Rashid Shaheed has been traded, so they lost their deep threat. It's really going to be Chris Olave. It's going to have to flow to make this offense happen. And unfortunately, when it comes to Chris Olave, he's just not explosive enough for this offense to rely so heavily on him without Rashid Shaheed out there. The other thing, the touch point, and it's a weird touch point, but the Panthers defense has been not crazy good at taking away the football, not crazy good at getting sacks, not crazy really good at anything. But the past few weeks, the Panthers have been able to hold teams to a lower rushing average to the running back position, which again means Alvin Kamara will probably be taken out of this football game. That's withstanding the fact that Alvin Kamara hasn't looked very good. We've also seen their defense holding teams to lower scoring games. We just watched them go toe-to-toe with the Packers, who are a pretty good offensive unit, and hold them in check on the road. I do think this game's going to set up where it's probably not the best DST matchup on the week, but if you're looking for somebody that I guarantee you is available, I guarantee you thought this year you would never potentially stream, I do think the Carolina Panthers defense has a little bit of juice. The next matchup to consider streaming, and it is kind of spicy too, only because they've added a new offensive weapon. It is the Texans, whose defense has been fantastic, going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. On the season, the Jags' run offense hasn't been that great since the first few weeks. We know the Texans don't let you run the football, and they don't let you pass that effectively either. The addition of Jacoby Myers does make this matchup, like what I said earlier, a little bit more spicy, where maybe, just maybe, Jacksonville is able to score some actual points against the Texans. What I do know about the Texans is they have to win this football game. They cannot lose. If they lose, they are done. The Texans obviously have the ability to sack the quarterback, get pressures, get interceptions, get fumbles. They have the ability to be this crazy dominant unit week over week over week. I know with the addition, like I said earlier, of Jacoby Myers, it could set up where the Jags are able to score a little bit more points on the Texans than we've seen on the season. But right now on the season, they are number 1 in points allowed. And the past 3 weeks, I want to say that they're 7th or 8th. Ultimately, I think the Texans are probably, again, a semi-spicy matchup. But because of how dominant this defensive unit has been on the season, they are a decent streaming option in week 10. The next DST that you could consider streaming, again, they're kind of all spicy because none of the matchups are that great or that favoring the defense. It is the Browns going up against the Jets. When it comes to this matchup, we're kind of banking on the fact that the Browns are still going to have some juice, even though they're kind of in shutdown mode. But then again, the Jets are also kind of in shutdown mode on the season. I do think Myles Garrett's going to be able to get there pretty much every single week. I do think that Cleveland will put Justin Fields in a little bit of a blender this week. He probably won't be able to run that effectively, and when he's not able to run too effectively, the passing game does get a little bit more limited for him, especially his deep down the field throws. I do think this matchup has the potential to be pretty dang low scoring because we know the Browns offense isn't very good. Neither of these teams have anything to play for, even though it's only week 10. I do think you could do a lot worse than the Browns, but you probably could do a little bit better than the Browns in week 10, but they're still a streamable defense just because of the matchup, because of the fact that Justin Fields has struggled against better defenses. And again, like I said, Myles Garrett's out there. He can wreck any game, any series, and I think it'll set up where the Cleveland Browns are able to get there as a streamable option in week 10. The next matchup to consider streaming is the Colts going up against the Falcons. I know the Falcons looked a lot better in week 9 against the Patriots, and the Patriots have a pretty dominant defense. I do think the trade for Sauce Gardner shores up the secondary a little bit more for the Colts. It does shore up an issue that they were having. They're shutting teams down more on the run, but they were giving up the most yards per game through the air from any defense in the NFL on the season. I do think it's going to set it up where you're not just going to have Drake London being able to catch a bajillion balls for a bajillion touchdowns. The other big piece of the Colts defense that's kind of fun to watch, they have the ability to create turnovers. They're getting sacks, they're getting fumbles, and they are getting interceptions. Right now, they are top 5 in the NFL in interceptions for the past 9 weeks. I do think that sets it up where there's a potential, because of the fact that Michael Penix can turn the football over, where the Colts could get a takeaway or two through the air. I do think the Colts are a decent enough option to stream this coming week. The last matchup to consider streaming in week 10 is the Lions going up against the Commanders. I don't believe we're going to have Jaden Daniels playing. I don't know if Terry McLaurin's going to be playing. I don't know how efficient Deebo Samuel's going to be. I don't think that Zach Ertz is viable when Marcus Mariota is starting as the quarterback for this football team. That means that you are limiting this offense to a handful of weapons, and they're not going to be able to be quite as elite because Jaden Daniels is not out there to be able to run the football, extend plays, and make things happen with his legs. The other big thing to note for Detroit on the season, minus in week 9, they have been top 5 in rush yards allowed to the running back position, or I guess you could say bottom 5. They have not allowed the opposing team to run the football effectively with the running back position. I don't think JCM is able to get there. I don't think Chris Rodriguez is able to get there. I don't think you're going to see them be able to run the football for the Commanders. So if they can't run, they have to pass. Well, they're going to have to pass even more than they would have had to have passed in the first place because we know the Lions are going to score points. I do think Dan Campbell is going to rally this football team after what I consider an embarrassing loss against J.J. McCarthy and the Vikings. I anticipate seeing the Detroit Lions defense play with a lot more intensity and hustle like we saw in week 8. I also think this offense for the Lions is going to go out there and slap the Commanders' pretty bad defense around. Normally I'll give like a little synopsis of each game, but none of these games are like too spicy. Obviously, when it comes to Carolina, they're playing against the Saints, who are obviously sellers both through offensive weapons and offensive linemen. So that should be a pretty good matchup for the Panthers. Defenses look pretty good for the past handful of weeks. When it comes to Houston, their defense has been elite. The matchup is not the best, but their defense is absolutely elite, and I don't know how well you're going to see Trevor Lawrence play against this elite defense for the Texans. And when it comes to Detroit, like I already literally just said, they're going to score a lot of points. Marcus Mariota passing. They're not going to let you run the football. Marcus Mariota passing. It should set it up where the Lions are able to absolutely dominate this matchup against the Commanders, both offensively and defensively. And again, they're one of the top 3 options, in my opinion, to stream in week 10. Alrighty, so there are my week 10 DST streaming options. Unfortunately, none of them are like crazy great, but there are a few viable ones and a few spicy ones that I threw in there for you guys as well, just so that you have some options in your league, because obviously there's going to be some of these DST options that are available and some that are not. Hopefully this video helps you get just a little bit closer to winning your fantasy football championship in 2025. If you guys are looking for deep league stashes, if you guys are in deeper leagues specifically, my waiver wire videos around here. The majority of these people are going to be rostered in less than 40% of leagues, which means that they should be available in 10 and 12-man leagues for most leagues out there in most platforms. Hopefully you're able to go watch that video. Hopefully you can find somebody on there who you can pick up, stash, throw on your bench, see how they look over the next handful of weeks, and hopefully, just hopefully, they can be viable for your fantasy football team and help you win in 2025. Hopefully I'll see you guys again. No, hopefully you guys will see me again real soon. And until then, y'all have a blessed day. Bye.